Well, welcome to another episode Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Mr. David Norton.
Hello.
Happy birthday, buddy.
Thank you.
We
Turned
were
18 a few days, or last week, I should say.
we were waiting a while to get this one in the books. And now that you're 18, I have a question to ask you.
Okay.
What is the answer to life?
Watching movies.
That's a
That's why
That brings up a good point. So I'm going to explain to you a little scenario I actually had this morning, and I think it would be a good movie because I think if you notice, talking about movies, everything like this, every movie is kind of the same. It's always a superhero movie, at least what's trending now, or it's a movie that seems like they barely push the boundary of when it comes to being creative. When it comes to a killer movie, you always kind of are able to guess it. There's nothing really that grabs you, in my opinion, and like, holy crap, I did not see that coming. So I was driving this morning and I'm using a different car because mine's in the shop, and I'm like, wow, these headlights suck. Either that or I'm experiencing night blindness, like I just can't see. So then I'm starting to go into town and every single light is out. I'm like, all right, there's something wrong with my eyes. I'm turning old. I'm 22. I'm losing my sight. And then next thing I know, I go up to a Wawa and all the lights are off. I'm like, all right, there's something going on here. So I roll up to this gas station. I get out of the car and a woman meets me at the door and goes, we're closed. I'm like, what's going on? She's like, power's out. I'm like, that's good to know because I'm about to head to my gym. And if the power's out, how are you going to work out in the dark? It's going to be weird. But it was a good feeling of knowing I wasn't going night blind, I would say. But I was like, that's a perfect movie is what they need to focus on, is like schizophrenia or paranoia. Like I was so paranoid I was losing my vision. Let's do something like that. Like it seems like all these people that are known as germaphobes. I don't know if you know who Howie Mandel is.
No, I've never heard of him. I am a little bit of a germaphobe myself.
Well, he's to the point where he bought a second house for people that sneeze. He wants you to go stay there. And like, so everybody now is a germaphobe. And you're like, they had it figured out. The whole coronavirus thing. They saw it coming. I mean, come on. Is that paranoia or is that truth? Because now they're not looking like paranoid people anymore.
Oh man, just that thing of like getting a second house for germaphobes, that would actually make for like a decent like comedy or something. Like I'd actually like to see something like that.
Would you buy a second house if you had enough money to put somebody there?
Hmm. I probably would. Like, I think my mother is like that. She wants to like get a second house, but only just so someone could pay rent so she can get more money, basically.
I'm just thinking, if you have a friend over for a sleepover, what kind of movie would that be where it's like, yeah, you got your own personal house. Then you have to come over and be like, dude, it's 4 a.m. Turn it the fuck down. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm an adult. It's like, it doesn't matter. People got to work in the morning.
Oh man. That would like the whole idea of having a second house for like someone who, you're for sneezing or something. Like, God, that's actually weird. Like, I've never heard of that guy who did that. But I'd actually love to see like something like it's like a comedy like that.
You've seen him on America's Got Talent. He's the bald guy with glasses. That's Howie Mandel.
Is that him? I think I've seen like a few images of him. Like I don't really watch stuff like that, but I have seen clips. I think I know what you're on about though.
Here's where my common sense comes in. I said America's Got Talent, and you're in the UK, so you probably have rarely seen that show.
I've rarely even seen like Britain's Got Talent. I don't even watch that. I think I know like a few of my friends who watch it, but I'm just not interested in it.
Well, for the audience, would I say, you call yourself the critic in training on Instagram. So it's a lot about movie reviews. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am an 18-year-old from the far and away place that is called Ireland. I got really interested in movies when I was about 14. Like my family and friends kind of were a big influence on it, but one of my closest friends was like really into movies and stuff. And every time we hung out, we just kind of started talking about movies. And he told me about like movies that I had never heard of. Like he introduced me to Edgar Wright's filmography. And that's kind of when my obsession kind of started. And then by the end of 2017, was starting to make like top 10 lists. I originally started reviewing like movies on YouTube, but I eventually kind of stopped that after only like 3 months last year because I hated one of the main reasons was I hated the sound of my own voice. So
Welcome to
uh,
the club, man. And let me tell you about a plot twist. I said you're from the UK and you're from Ireland, so that's a movie in itself. Guy gets dude's place wrong in a conversation.
oh man. And then like the main reason like I hated the sound of my own voice, but also I have like no editing equipment. Like this was before I even got my laptop, so I was just recording shit in my phone, and then I would get my friend to edit all the videos for me and post them because he's a YouTuber himself. Like he does all gaming videos, so he's used to it. So he could do it in like 5 minutes for me.
I think you will go to any extent to be able to do what you find fun. I mean, I don't know how many times as a little kid I was told, "Oh, you can't do that because we don't have this." So I was like, "I'll do it." They're like, "No, you can't." I was like, "No, I'm gonna do it. Like, it's gonna happen. I'm going to create Jackass from my phone. I'm gonna do all these stupid stunts." Anybody own a nail gun? Like, it was that type of thing where you had to experience the full variety of stuff. But what would you say gives you a different perspective on movies than everybody else out there? Because I mean, anybody really has an opinion on a movie. So a lot of movies that I think are the best, people say that's just complete dog shit. And I'm like, you're wrong. You got to analyze every factor of a movie. I went into, in my high school years, I took a lot of video editing classes, a lot of directing classes, and learning about camera angles. I completely see different things that people see in movies. More people are like, he got shot. I'm like, yeah, but did you see the low angle that he used to capture that shot? Like, it was perfect. Like, it added a whole nother effect in there. And, I kind of critique it more. I'm like, I took the fun out of a movie, which is like watching Bird Box blindfolded. So then they're blindfolded and you're blindfolded and you don't know what the hell's going on. I will crap on that movie. It is terrible.
I haven't even seen that, but I have like a few friends who've told me to watch it, but I was just like, it's basically just kind of a quiet place, but instead of like no sound, it's just no sight. And I'm just like, I don't know if I even want to watch it. Like I probably will. But like going back to when you said kind of, having a different perspective, I kind of like to critique kind of like the story rather than how, it was made. Like I am starting to kind of get interested in like camera angles and whatnot, but I mostly go in for kind of like the story, the characters, and the acting. That's kind of what I go in for. Like like English is my favorite subject in school, and that's kind of what we have to really focus on when we're like doing essays on like kind of the play, the novel, and the movie that we have to study. So like I've kind of whenever I watch a movie, and if I just find the story kind of bland or uninteresting or the characters like annoying, I'll probably not like the movie. But most of the time when I watch a movie, I genuinely enjoy it, even if like a lot of people say it's probably like boring because it's like a slow burn drama or something.
Sometimes in a movie, though, like even if it's like one of the best movies ever with like an amazing plot, I just feel like I can't get past some of the characters. Like any movie with Jerry Seinfeld in it, I'm like, nope. Like just the voice, it just something about it really hits me. I mean, I'm lucky that Adam Sandler slides through. It's that nasal thing. I don't know what it is. And if Jerry's out there listening, I'm sorry, man. I'm never going to watch comedians in cars getting coffee, even though everybody says I would love it. But you know what? Everyone hates the Green Lantern. And I honestly dead love that movie. I think it was amazing. I think they rushed it, but it's the only movie for Green Lantern. So I will fight for its drive to society.
Yeah, that's another thing I haven't seen because I only kind of got interested in superhero movies when I was about maybe 15. It was when like my friends dragged me to see like Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, like I had some of my friends, they were like, "Dude, you need to see this movie. The first one is amazing." I'm like, "Okay, but should I not watch like the first one first?" And I just had no time because they just immediately dragged me to see it, and I ended up really enjoying it. it wasn't like the first superhero movie I'd seen. Like, I watched Doctor Strange when it came out, and I had no idea that it was a Marvel movie. I just thought it was some kind of weird magic movie, and I was kind of into that stuff. So I kind of decided to give superhero movies like a second chance, like after I saw Guardians 2. So I went to see like Spider-Man Homecoming, and then I watched like the entire MCU. And there are like some that I don't like, and there's a lot that I do like. I haven't seen most of them in almost a year now since Far From Home came out. And I'm trying to do this experiment that another person did, where they don't watch superhero movies for a year, and then they go back to them and see how their opinion changes on them.
I'm afraid to
Because
do
when I,
that because every movie I've done that for has not held up at all. Like it's trying to capture that nostalgia feel where you're sitting there
yeah,
watching, like, oh my God, I'm 5 years old again, and the world hasn't turned into complete dog crap. Or in your terms, I would say shite. That is one of my all-time favorite
shite.
words. Yes, I'm gonna get you to say it more in the podcast because I love that word. Um,
You should
but
get me to
no,
say feck as well. That's another Irish one.
that's a great one. I swear to God, I love the Irish people for their languages.
All
Okay.
the slang.
But when we're talking about like a lot of the movies nowadays, like it's really hard for me, especially like I'm a money saving type of guy. I'm not like I don't want to go spend big bucks to go to the movies. And now that it seems like we don't have the opportunity to go experience the movies again, a lot of that plays into a factor of how a movie handles out. When you go see Avengers Endgame in theaters is completely different than when you see it on your phone laying in your room or something. It might be more
Oh,
comfortable.
definitely, yeah.
It might be more comfortable because you can pause it and then go take a pee or something because it's like a 4 hour freaking movie. But it's not like the way they're doing it now, at least in my country, is the fact of now they're all drive-ins, which is cool. I think that was a thing we should definitely bring back. But now we've lost the option to sit side by side and have the fight for the cup holder scenario with the guy next to you where you're like, this is my fucking seat. Don't put your drink in my cup holder. And they're
Me
like,
and my
okay,
sister, every time we go to the cinema, we fight over the cup holder.
yeah. So when it comes to movie genres, though, you're talking about the characters. Who's your all-time favorite character? Like actor-wise, actor or
I have
actress?
like a good few favorite characters, but I'd say like my two of my all-time favorites are Cassius Green from Sorry to Bother You, which is my profile picture, and Gary King, which is the that Simon Pegg plays in The World's End. Because like the reason I like Gary King a lot is because one, he's just very funny because he's played by Simon Pegg, but also like kind of like deep down, like towards the end of the film, he kind of reveals that like he's got nothing left in his life, and all he wants is just to enjoy kind of life with his friends and not really give a shit. Because like the whole point of the World's End is they're going from pub to pub in his old childhood town to get a pint each, which is 12 pubs in total.
Wait, is Gary King the guy who plays Shaun of the Dead?
Yeah,
Oh, I
and
love that guy, dude. Hot Fuzz is one of my all-time favorite movies, dude. I remember seeing that when I was like 15 years old. My
that
grandpa's
was
like,
the friend my that was the movie my friend showed me when I was like 14,
my
when he
grandpa
introduced
was
me to
like,
Edgar Wright.
should we be watching this? I'm like, I don't know. It's really freaking good, dude. He's like, there's a lot of like sex, murder, and all this. He's like, just don't tell your grandma. And I was like, all right, cool. We're in
Yeah,
agreement.
my dad, when I told my dad that was one of my favorite movies, he said that he had seen it and he said he did not like it at all. He doesn't really like kind of movies with a lot of swearing and stuff in it.
What's crazy is you come across a lot of those movies in like a $5 bin at like Walmart or some bargain store or something. You don't ever come across like those in the theaters, for instance. Like which really kind of sucks because I think Shaun of the Dead, I think Hot Fuzz, I think The World's End. They're like Paul, for instance, great fucking movie.
Oh, I
But
love that. My uncle gave that to me as a present when I was like 15, I think.
you never see those in the movie theaters because it's always got to be something with Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Matthew McConaughey, all these major celebrities. Anything Tom Cruise is fucking in. Dude, I've seen a lot of documentaries where it's like when Mission Impossible was playing, I saw Tom Cruise jump from a building. He actually did that stunt. And when he jumped, he had his foot hit the side wall of the building, and it went completely upwards where he broke his ankle. And then
Yeah, they showed that in the trailer. I remember seeing that.
but he continued off camera and like was hobbling around. You get to see him fall in pain after the camera thing was shot. And I was like, wow, that's an actor that really cares about his craft. And that's where I see the passion in it. Do I agree with the whole Scientology thing? No, but I'm open, whatever. And I'm looking at all these actors that have these moments. Like a really good one I'll give a shout out to is Leonardo DiCaprio when he was playing Django. When he slammed his hand across the glass table, he broke a glass cup, and you get to see him in the scene see blood on his hand. Well, when you're watching it, he looks down and he's like, "Oh shit!" But he just rolls with it and uses it as a prop. So when you see him smear the blood on the girl's face, that actress, that's her actual reaction. Like, oh my God, you're rubbing real blood on me. And then after the scene was over, they took care of the situation. That's what I love to hear. That's what makes me think of the movie and that scene in a completely 100% better way.
Yeah, Tarantino is kind of like one of those directors where he kind of does stuff like that. I watched an interview when he was on the Graham Norton show about like when Inglourious Bastards came out, and he wants like there's a scene where Christoph Waltz has like literally strangles a woman to death, and Tarantino said to the actress where like he was the one who actually choked her because I don't think Christoph Waltz wanted to do that. But he said in the interview, he said, okay, so I said to her, I'm just gonna basically strangle you for a few seconds just to get a reaction. And she trusted him. So like he literally strangled the woman for like a few seconds to get her genuine reaction. Like I really appreciate when like, you know, kind of directors like I don't appreciate directors strangling their actors, but like it's kind of when like they're so dedicated.
The realness behind it.
Yeah, they want that realness, or when like an actor kind of messes up and then, but they kind of improvise with that. So like the Leonardo DiCaprio thing when he cut his hand, like I was really impressed at that because it felt like so genuine when like, you know, he cut his hand and then he just smeared the blood all over your one. Like I thought that was actually scripted until I found out after I watched the movie that it wasn't. It was just Leo kind of rolling with it.
I think it's because a lot of those actors are still diving into old techniques. Like back in the day, if you've ever seen the original Dukes of Hazzard, I don't even know if you've seen the newer ones.
I have not. I haven't seen any of them.
The Burt Reynolds, good old Burt Reynolds. I don't know if you know who he is. No,
I do not.
you need to
I
Google
know
these
who Ryan
people.
Reynolds is.
Well, you're gonna Google these people when we're over to this podcast. But
Just make like this giant list of people to Google and just search them all up.
and so many people out there listening are gonna be like, "You don't know Smokey the Man." Like, you don't know that? That's Tom Selleck, I
you
think.
you don't know who this is?
Oh God, now I'm gonna get shit because I think I mixed up actors. But back to what I was saying. Burt Reynolds, for instance, when he's playing in Dukes of Hazzard, there's a scene where he slaps a woman in the face. You might have seen The Longest Yard or oh God, is it Dukes? Yeah, it is Dukes. No, it's not Dukes of Hazzard. I'm mixed up. It's The Longest Yard. Hey, everybody listening, I figured it out. Okay, now The Longest Yard. So have you ever seen that one with Adam Sandler, the remake?
I haven't, unfortunately. There's like a lot of films
Dude,
I
you're
need to watch.
freaking
Like,
killing me. How are you a film reviewer and you don't see these movies? These are
dude,
classics.
it's all in the name. I am the critic in training. I'm still training to be a film critic.
That's a good point. Okay, but in the original The Longest Yard, there's a scene where he slaps a girl in the face, and she's like, "Oh, that was an actual slap." She did not know that was coming. That was in a time period where it wasn't guys hit girls. It was that thing. We've grown as a society. That part aside, though, that was real thing. There's also a scene in the original Godfather where a lot of those guys, like, you're not acting like you're getting shot with a gun. Where's the actual reaction? He goes, I don't know. I've never been shot by a gun. The dude pulled out a gun and shot it right beside him, and the dude freaked the hell out, like, oh my God. He goes, now you know how to act like you've been shot with a gun. And it's like those types of things. It's also how, like, if you ever seen the movie The Crow, where Bruce Lee's kid died. I think that's The Crow. Where the guy comes on the table and he's firing all these guns, and they had the fake prop round in the gun. And it was a dud ammunition or something. The guy had rigged this bullet, and a piece of the bullet actually flung off and hit Bruce Lee, and they had to take him to the hospital later. Not Bruce Lee, his son, and he later died. These are
Oh,
topics, obviously.
Jesus. Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
Those, I think when it comes to a real scene, it's nice to catch those actual reactions. If you look at anything from like the old type of movies when it comes to horror, like The Exorcist, or, they would put the water on cold. So when they hopped in the shower and you get the woman screaming, that's her actual reaction to like when you hop in the shower and it's fucking cold. Like you're like, oh my God. Like I love an actor or a director that can do those. Like, hey, we're going to do this thing where I'm actually going to throw you out into the snow and you're going to be shirtless. And I want to get that actual capture of you being cold instead of faking it, because I think it plays way more into the situation. Like when you're watching The Hateful Eight, you're looking at them like, yeah, those clothes are kind of keeping them warm. It all kind of plays into the scene, but everything plays in environment, lighting, what's going on, the story, the basis behind it, how good actors can kind of interact with each other. Sometimes you watch a movie, you're like, there's something missing in this scene.
Yeah, going back to like getting the genuine reaction, I think the first time I ever heard like something like that was Die Hard when, they dropped your man. Oh, what's his name again? The guy who played Hans Gruber. Where like they said they were
Alan
going to
Rickman?
drop. Yeah, Alan Rickman. I'm terrible forgetting his name, but when he has to like when John McClane drops him off the building, they said to Alan, "Okay, we're going to drop you on the count of three," and then the director said one, and they just dropped him. So like when he fell, that was his genuine reaction.
I would have been screaming, "You son of a bitch!"
I would have as well, actually.
Well, like, if have you ever seen the movie The Voices with Ryan Reynolds?
Oh, I don't know. I've seen a few of his films, but it's been like years since I've seen them. Like the only one that I saw recently were like the Deadpool movies.
Okay. Well, I really recommend this movie if you like. Are you more of a horror fan, action fan?
I'm kind of like comedy and action, but I have been getting into horror recently. Like I've really liked Hereditary and Get Out.
This is a lot like well, Get Out's a perfect one when I talk about a movie that comes to mental health. I think another one too was Inside Out or something. The one with the Disney movie where the girl, you get to see her emotions.
Oh yeah, Pixar.
I think it's important to capture that there's this giant thing that people are now recognizing, such as mental health, and it's interesting to focus about. Like when if you ever seen The Visit with M. Night Shyamalan,
Oh,
amazing director.
I have seen The Visit. I
I
do
was
not like
I
that
don't
movie.
I do not get scared in movies. I was at the movie theater, everybody was all curled up like, "Oh my God." And I'm sitting there like, it's just a fucking movie. But then once I figured out the grandparents weren't their grandparents and they were mentally like, I was like, oh, that's when I got scared, because that's what scares me the most. Because dude, if you've ever seen The Voices, it's about a guy. It's Ryan Reynolds. He works at a factory, takes this medication, but he's got like this something wrong with his brain. He's not, I wouldn't say mentally challenged, but he just doesn't understand a lot of things, doesn't see it properly, and he needs this medicine to keep his head kind of clear. Well, he ends up hitting a deer with a girl. Spoiler alert. And the girl runs off into the woods and he's chasing her with a knife. So he's just chasing with a knife, like, come back, come back. I had to put it out of its misery. And then he like finds the girl, she falls backwards, he trips and stabs her. And then ends up hiding her body at his house. And he has a cat and a dog. The dog is like, it's okay, buddy. Has this voice. It's like the angel and devil on your shoulder starts going, it's okay, buddy. You didn't mean to do it. And the cat's like, you gotta fucking hide the body. You gotta fucking hide the body. Do it. Hide the body. And then so he ends up chopping up the body, putting it into bags, and then putting it into his refrigerator. And whenever he opens up the door, the girl's head is just sitting there, and she starts talking to him. And it's all in his head. And it's this whole entire thing of like, oh, he can't help it. There's something wrong with him. He's not taking his medication. And eventually he kills a couple more people and he's all really upset. And you get to see these conflicting emotions. That's what I love about a movie. But that didn't get shit. That popped up on Crackle. What the fuck is Crackle? Like, Joe Dirt 2 was on Crackle and they made a second one? Yeah. And it was not that good. But that didn't pop up in the theaters. I'm like, how did that not make it? But you had something like, oh God, I don't want to crap on it because so many people love the movie. You had The Purge in there. Let's say The Purge. It was good the first time around, but then you get to the third one, you're like, all right, we get it. Society that
It's the
does
same
anything.
thing over and over again.
It is a movie I got laid after, so I'm not going to talk crap on the original, but the others, eh. But seriously, though, like you look at and then you look at how The Voices, and if you really Yeah, okay, they didn't have A-list celebrities in it. But it was like The Office, where you're watching it, like camera quality's kind of shit, and then it's like, oh, but this is really funny and it's really freaking entertaining.
Yeah, like my cinema, like the one that I always go to, is like notorious for doing that, where they have like all like the big blockbuster movies, and then for kind of like one of the like lesser known movies, basically the one that wasn't like didn't have a lot of trailers or something, that's only there for like a week before it's gone. Like back in like 2018, I was really excited for this movie called Bad Times at the El Royale, and like it had a decent cast, like it had like Chris Hemsworth in it and everything, and the cinema only kept it for like 2 weeks before they got rid of it. And they played all like, you know, they kept like the Halloween reboot way longer than that, and I was really annoyed because and then I had to wait until like December to watch Bad Times on my phone, and I was really pissed off about that.
Have you ever seen Wonder Woman?
I had to wait until I watched that on my phone as well.
Cause it went into the theaters and like 2 days later it was gone. I was like, what the fuck? Like I would like to watch. And Aquaman 2 was kind of like the same thing. It was only in there for like a week, but they keep like movies I don't care about in there for the longest time. Like
I know. They
it's
kept like back in 2014 they kept the Lego movie in the cinema, like my cinema, for 6 solid months. And like I liked the movie, right? I only saw it like once in the cinema, but I watched it a lot on DVD when it came out. But like 6 months is kind of a stretch for
yeah.
like
My buddy, what me and him do, we kind of like, he's the only reason I ever go to the movie theaters. I'm more than happy just waiting of coming out DVD. Honestly, spending $10 or $15 for a ticket, and then when you walk in and you smell the amazing smell of popcorn, and then you're just like, fuck, I gotta get a popcorn now. But we'd always do $5 movie night on Tuesdays. And so I have kept every single ticket from every movie we've ever been to, and then like a little like collector thing, so I can save them. Be like, oh, we've seen. He loves Tom Holland. He always says I look like him. I fucking hate Tom Holland, which brings me to a really good question. It's kind of a segue. Who's Spider-Man to you? If you say Tom Holland,
see, like I only kind of got into like Spider-Man movies when I was about 14, 15. I've seen like all the Spider-Man movies, but I'd say like my favorite is probably Into the Spider-Verse. But out of the live action, I kind of prefer Tobey Maguire, just because I think, like, since it is the original,
I'll tell you right
even though
now
I
that
saw Homecoming first.
I have talked to Thomas Tomei, who listens to this, and he's going to listen to this part of it, and he's going to know because he does comic history. So when I had him on, he said Tobey Maguire. The reason why is because I think it was the best capture of a 30-year-old guy playing a kid in a movie. It made you, oh, he's 18 years old. Tom Holland, I will agree that he is probably the best fit for Spider-Man because he's around that age. I just can't. I just don't like him. I feel like he stole a bit of my face, and I just think that's kind of dumb. But if you look at like, dude, I totally lost my train of thought. I was talking about popcorn, and then,
And
okay,
then it went to Tom Holland.
yeah, I just that guy. I'm telling you, this is how the podcast goes. My mind's a freaking rabbit on. I'm gonna create a segment called "Rabbit Holes with Rob," and that's what we're just gonna turn the whole podcast into. No, but like if you look at like paying for tickets, for instance. My buddy is always like, if we're going to do anything, let's do $5 movie night. I don't mind paying $30. We're going to reserve seats the day before. I'm like, let's just show up. You get the seat. That was always the fun part. I watched The Purge in the front row. Do you know how I almost had 3 seizures during that whole entire movie because everything's moving across the screen? You just got to look at one part of it and just hope
Oh
something
yeah.
comes into your vision. Like, but all that aside, there is this thing where movies just feel like it's the same plot, it's the same thing, and they just throw a fancy actor at it. And it's really hard to get like, it took me forever to get past the fact that Chris Evans is Captain America. To me, he's always been the Human Torch because I saw him in Fantastic Four, and it took a long time until Endgame, where I was like, well, now he's done. Like, what the, like, right at the
Yeah.
end, I actually think he's Captain America now. But like, you see a movie like that and all these movies that come out, there's always the dating movie, there's always the action movie, there's always this, there's always that. But
The unfunny comedy.
sometimes they throw a bunch of actors into a movie and it really does go together. And a lot of times they throw a bunch of actors in there together and you're like, what was the fucking story? Did I just see this movie because it has Matt Damon and like 50 other guys in it? Like Ford versus Ferrari, for instance. It's a great movie. I'm not a car guy, but they were able to capture my attention during the movie because my buddy's all into cars, mechanics, everything. So he's like, we're seeing this movie. I'm like, okay. He's like, Matt Damon's in. I'm like, okay. I don't really care that much about Matt Damon, but sure, let's go. And we're watching it. I'm like, wow, just to see how it didn't it focused around the cars, but it also incorporated history, which I liked. And I liked the fact that you get to see this movie, this whole thing, and it was a completely different thing, but it actually happened. It might have been dramatization up a little bit or dramatized a little bit, but it was still kind of incorporating real things and real knowledge of our past with American cars and muscle cars and the whole Ford industry, which I thought was interesting that they could do. But then you see a movie like, let's toss out, oh God, what's a movie that was popular, but it just felt like you didn't accomplish anything watching it?
Oh, I'm trying to think of like all the films I saw last year. I saw kind of a few that weren't considered popular. I think the only ones I can think of are like kind of the superhero movies. Like,
That's more like trying to go off the comics, but Mr. Megorium's Magic Emporium. What the fuck was that movie about? I had the longest title I couldn't pronounce. I was probably 14 years old watching that, but we saw it in theaters, and I'm like, what? I don't understand. Did I just watch like the beginning scene of Harry Potter where he's picking out the wand? Like, there's just a million different things. It's about a freaking shop or whatever that has all these magical things in it, and I still barely remember the movie. But it's like you see something like that. A lot of movies don't really show a story anymore. And I think what is interesting is now that like directing, acting, it's so hard to do right now because of the whole coronavirus and all that. It's going to be amazing to see how creative people can get with this whole thing. How they're able to even like, does that fear you at all? Does that scare you? The fact that movies are kind of not really being, I guess, recorded as much before. I think that also plays into the factor of they might actually be better because now that there's going to be fewer movies out there, you don't have to pop them out like McDonald's cheeseburgers. I mean, that's what they were doing. Like, oh, this actor just made this movie and he made that one and he was also in this one. I'm like, The Rock was in 7 movies in a month. What the fuck was he doing between all that? Did he sleep?
yeah, like I know, like The Rock is in fucking everything now at this point.
Yeah.
Like he's just in everything. Like, I think the only ones I saw with him last year were Fighting with My Family and Hobbs and Shaw. They were pretty good. I actually didn't mind Hobbs and Shaw, first Fast and Furious movie I ever saw.
See,
Probably bad.
my buddy again is a Fast and Furious fanatic, so that's every time it comes into theaters. We're seeing Fast and Furious. I'm like, I don't want to see it. He's like, I bought your ticket already. I'm like, well, fucking, you're wasting a ticket. He's at my house honking. We're going to Fast and Furious. I'm like, okay. But my favorite was Tokyo Drift, and a lot of people didn't like that one. But I thought it
I
was
don't like it myself.
really. What was wrong with it?
Oh, it's just like kind of the whole thing just felt like scene after scene of just the same shit. And I
It's
wasn't a fan of kind of
That's
the
Fast and you
characters.
just explained to me Fast and Furious. That's all the same shit with a different. Oh,
I
we got to
know.
get in our giant ass cars and stop this thing. The government wants us. Now we're against the government. Now we're with the government again. Now we're doing our own thing. Now I have to chase down my brother. It's like, okay, that one seems a little bit interesting. But then you go to the factor of I think it's the actor. Nobody likes the guy that played the Southern dude, Tex, whatever his name was. Nobody likes
I
that
actually
actor.
I actually thought he did a decent job.
I did too.
It's just like I wasn't like a huge fan of his character, but he did a really good job with like the material he was given. Same with kind of the the love interest and what's his name? The Japanese fella who's in like every other Fast and Furious movie. I forget his name. But like the three of them were like the standouts for me. Like I actually think they did a good job, even though, I wasn't a fan of the material that they were given.
In training, huh? I had to
I
do it.
am,
I had to do that. No, but if you look at the Legion, for instance, you ever seen the movie Legion?
I think so. I've heard of it, but I haven't
Where it was
watched it.
there was like a plague coming down and there was a diner. The guy who plays in like every war movie ever. I forgot who he is. God, oh my God, there's gonna be people listening. Like, I know who that is. But the guy who played in
Tom
Tokyo,
Hanks.
no,
He's in like every
no,
like war
no,
film.
no. He was in a movie where he had 6 kids and then he married a girl that had like 7 kids. I don't know. And then it was like cheaper by the dozen, but it's not Stephen Mark. Uh, but
Well, I think I might know that movie.
but they're
Six
at
kids and then I don't
well
know.
they're at he plays like every sea captain general out there. He was in the movie 43. I forgot. Have you ever seen that movie? That's like the one everyone
That's
hates.
I've heard of it, but I haven't watched it. Like, cause it's just like skit after skit of like all these celebrities of you
My,
know
my buddy,
doing terrible skit. I've seen the Chris Pratt one. I've seen that one, and I
where he has to like eat a whole bunch and then try and poop on this girl, and then he
yeah,
ends up getting hit by a car.
I've seen that one. I had no idea what the hell was going on.
There's my buddy right now that's probably going to listen to this, and he does a movie podcast, Chuck, called Chuck Goes to the Movies. He's going to be listening. Like, I'm going to send you a million messages. My phone's going to blow up when this episode releases, just on the fact of like, it's this actor, you're talking about this actor. I'm like, all right, dude, sorry. But you look at the fact of when, like, oh God, dude, did I just lose the Legion, for instance? It's at a diner, okay? So the diner, and then there's this plague, and the dude from Tokyo Drift's in it. But he did an amazing role in that thing. He kind of played like the mechanic's son. The dad runs the diner. Then all these people are locked down where this biblical plague comes in, and all these angels are coming down to just murder everybody at the diner. And Michael the archangel, he got cast down from heaven, and he's coming to save these people. Realizes the girl that's pregnant is going to have this baby or whatever. That's going to end up changing God's perspective on the world. So all these, Tyrese Gibson, the guy who plays in Fast and Furious,
Oh yeah, yeah.
he's
He's a
in
good
it.
actor.
Yeah, well, he's in it. And all these like angels come down and they're like monsters basically. They're dressed up as people, but like they end up like their necks start like cracking and they end up like getting like their limbs get extended out like giant like monsters, and they just start trying to attack this diner. They're eating people, they're doing all this crazy shit. And
The
Michael the
Walking
Ark
Dead Angel edition.
Exactly. And Michael the Archangel's pulling out like Uzis out of his jacket and just lighting up all these freaking angels and stuff. And you're like, what the hell's happening? And it's this crazy movie, but it didn't get that much attention. It actually barely got into theaters, but it was such a powerful movie. You're like, what the like, it's like Sharknado. The first one was really good, but then you're looking at the other ones and there's like 30 more. You're like, no, I'm good. We don't need another one. But then you start seeing like all the off-brand movies. One off-brand movie I recommend you watch, and you're gonna hate me for it. Zombie Strippers.
I have heard of that because back in 2016 I was in kind of a zombie apocalypse genre phase after I watched like Zombieland or something. And I made like a list of all of them. I found like zombie strippers and I was tempted to watch it, but then I decided against it. I don't know if it's because I forgot or I just couldn't find like a good server to stream it.
No, it's because your gut was telling you the two things you don't want to see is strippers and zombies mixed together, because that's what it is. I thought it was maybe a bunch of zombies attacking a strip club. No, it's a bunch of strippers that are turning into zombies slowly. I've never seen that much blood in my entire life, and I've seen very gory murder movies where somebody's head's just completely off and people's limbs are slashed. That's what gets our attention is blood. You see a person with half an arm because he just got butchered, or I'm like, it's cool to throw that in there, but don't put the whole entire movie on it. Like, for instance, you ever seen District 9?
No, I don't think so. There's like a lot of films I haven't seen, but I have seen like a-
I
I think I've seen
recommend
it.
that
I don't
movie.
know.
It's the alien movie where the dude has like the aliens are living on Earth because they don't have the whatever tools to get back in their spaceship and travel. So it's like this whole race of giant aliens that are like living in this dump yard. They eat trash and shit, and all these people are just keeping them there. The one dude goes there to interview people and he gets infected and starts slowly turning into an alien. So they're trying to figure out how to use their weapons against them by using that guy. Because to shoot their gun, you need to have like their DNA or something like that. So the dude's turning into like this alien. You gotta Google it. But
I think I've heard of it. Like, it sounds familiar. I might have seen it, but like,
you're proving my point exactly, is the fact that that's a really good fucking movie and not a lot of people have seen it. I know so many movies that I can sit there and just toss out and you're like, I haven't seen it. It's not your fault. It's the fact that these movies are just sliding under the radar, and it's like you have to do your own research and shit to figure out. Like Rotten Tomatoes gave Norbit with Eddie Murphy. I don't know if you've ever seen that one.
I think I have, yeah.
They Eddie Murphy plays 6 different people in that movie. That is like holy shit, like that's amazing acting. It's an amazing and funny film, but the factor is Rotten Tomatoes gave it like a 9% or a 7%. You're like, oh my god, like that's terrible. But it's like they all base it off of who's in it, how much money was put into it, did it get a lot of money in the box office. Okay, I can guarantee you that there's a bunch of movies in the box office that make millions and millions of dollars, billions of dollars, but they're fucking terrible. And then you look at something that's like this budget was like, like they could have thrown maybe
Tenor.
five. Yeah, it's like this is like the Quiznos of budgets. And then, but they're amazing movies. I mean, that's what I feel like is kind of doing it a bit of disservice, is the fact that creativity does not get funded compared to a templated design when it comes to a movie. It's like Call of Duty over and over and over again. All right, we got another serial killer movie. Who's the serial killer? Probably the creepy neighbor that's collecting all the pets. Like that's always the answer.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. Another game that kind of repeats stuff is FIFA. Have you heard of
It's
that?
a sports game. What are they else supposed to do? Come on now.
Change the haircut. That's literally all they do.
That's priceless. Okay. That's amazing. All right, what would you consider the worst actor? Who in your mind that when you see them in anything you're like, nope, I can pass.
Oh man, I've seen like a lot of like there are like a lot of actors that I've seen that have given terrible performances, but I never bothered to like learn their names, or I just forget who they are because I've only seen them in like one or two movies. It's always kind of like it's always like the ones where like they're in like kind of the coming of age comedy that is terrible because they don't do it well. I think it was what's her name from Radio Rebel. I didn't like her performance. My sister made me watch it a few days ago. Debbie Ryan.
Debbie
I don't
Ryan.
think she's a great actor.
I look at, like, we're talking about movies that deal a little bit more with mental health. How about we deal with a movie that's more about the times and stop going off a lot of the stuff in the past? Like when they had the movies that incorporated like a ghost that was in a text or it was caller or something that kept calling you, and then after the
Unfriended.
yeah,
Oh my God, I
well,
enjoy that for all the wrong reasons because it's just all the actors in it were appalling to me. I
I
watched that
think they should have did better with the actors, but I think the movie concept was pretty good on the fact of like it's a lot more dealing with like times today. Like I would love to see a movie that dealt with like Twitter, where like you're like I don't know, a bunch of like a comedian is writing a bunch of things and he's putting out jokes on Twitter and that's how he gets his start. And then next thing you know, he sends a tweet to the wrong people and he's got people coming after to kill him and he's got to go through this whole comedic thing of like that's pretty cool. And there's a movie coming out with Ryan Reynolds called where he plays in like a Fortnite type game, but he's
Oh,
living in.
yeah. Is it shit? I forget what it's called, but I'm actually looking forward to that.
That's what I'm saying. It's more relevant to the times. It makes it more interesting than dealing with the same old. It's either really, really sci-fi or it's old school murder. Like, oh, there's a serial killer. Who is it? Oh, it's the creepy guy. Like, I would like to see something that incorporates a little bit more of relatable things to how we can vibe as an audience, because there's not a lot of movies where I'm watching it. I mean, I'll watch it, but then afterwards I'm like, it's an okay movie. I don't want to say it's okay. I thought Knives Out was really good. I love the mystery factor behind it. I love it when you're trying to guess and they start kind of piecing all these like Sherlock Holmes things together. But
The donut, but there's a donut inside of the donut.
exactly. Every movie, though, has that detective thing, has those parts that you need to start analyzing more that audience members really don't. They go, oh, a gun just fired. Okay. Well, if you look at everything that leads up to that, that gets kind of left out in a lot of storylines, the reason why I like Knives Out and Sherlock Holmes so much is they start playing all these little details that lead up to this thing. Like, oh, it's because in Knives Out, like, oh, the girl throws up when she hears a lie, ends up playing down later. When you start listening and you start hearing it, somebody explaining that to you, it's like if you ever look at the commentary for a movie. When you listen to the commentary, they're pointing out things that you completely missed. One of my all-time favorite movies, and I think it's the kind of, I'm going to foreshadow the future here. If they ever make a cure for coronavirus, I'm going to wait 6 months because I Am Legend. If you've ever seen that movie,
I I have not, but you mentioned it a bunch of
motherfucker,
times
dude,
in
Jesus.
you've mentioned it a bunch of times in like your podcast, and I've literally just gotten to that mindset where like, okay, I'm just gonna follow your advice with that fucking like wait a few months for the
Yeah.
vaccine.
Yeah, because that's going to turn you into a zombie. But that movie was, I saw that in theaters when I was a kid. And one of the scariest things when it came to those zombies, man, the fact that, like, it's like you're out in the middle of daylight, but then you turn on this abandoned building and it's dark in there, and there's just all these things huddled together and like breathing like that. You're like, holy shit. And then they end up seeing you and chasing you out. But as soon as they hit sunlight, freaking start getting burned. And then they would sit there and they watch Will Smith. And there's this line in the middle between these buildings, these sky rises, where it's the sun leaking through, and it's between him and the zombies. And the zombies are just waiting for that sun to go down to where that line disappears, and they're going to chase after him. That was so much of it was like, I'm just getting goosebumps talking about it. But every time I rewatch that movie, I start picking up things I never saw the first time I watched it, which is showing you how much we're lacking as an audience when it comes to the actual play of the movie. And I'm like, fuck, like, how do we be able to pay attention to everything? Do we just got to keep rewatching it and learning it and end up, increasing our opinion about it overall? Because there are some movies out there where I watched it the first time, I'm like, never again. That was a complete 3-hour waste of my life. Maybe that movie would be better. We talked about the fact that, like, have you ever rewatched something? That could be something I could rewatch. I could end up liking Bird Box. I don't see it happening, but I'm just saying it could happen. I could pick up something like, oh my God, there's a sponsorship
Yeah,
for Pepsi in it.
yeah, that's like I've done it a few times where I'd watch a movie, I think it's average, and then like I'd watch it again. Like an example of that is Gone Girl. I watched that like last year, and I was like, I think it's kind of overrated. But then a few months ago, when I was in Wales, I was just like it was just on the TV, and I decided to watch it, and I was like, fuck, how did I not like this? This shit is intriguing as fuck.
Is there any movies out there you feel like they should add this would make it a whole lot better? Like, I mean, is there any movies you've seen that you're like, all right, if they just did this or they incorporated this, it would be a way better movie?
Hmm. Not 100% sure. Like I have like when I was younger, I saw like a bunch of films where they kind of just toss like shit like that into it, and there would be like no setup to it. But like in recent years, like Edgar Wright, he would like make us. There's like a small joke, like in shit like Hot Fuzz or something, and then it somehow pays off later on in the third act, which is kind of why I like his movies. Like sometimes he will just some shit will just be mentioned as a joke, and then it will pay off. I think Scott Pilgrim did that, and Hot Fuzz did that.
I think Scott Pilgrim's pretty cool because I think it relates more to a younger generation, which is like your prime audience. I feel like is a lot of kids just sitting at home, not really, not, you don't have a car, so it's like can't go out and explore the world. It's like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna sit and play video games. You're gonna watch movies. It's like, there you go. Step Brothers was fun as shit. I don't know how many movies I've seen way too early where I ended up saying something they said in a movie, and then someone's like, you can't say that's a dirty word. I'm like, I didn't know pussy was a bad word. I thought it was the name of a cat. They're like, that's not how you used it though. I'm like, whoops. But you
I did
look,
that in school once in front of a teacher.
please tell me about that, please.
It's basically, I think, oh yeah, it was when we had to like do like our music exam and no one wanted to go first. So I just said, okay, I'll do it, you pussies, in front of the teacher. And he just let me off. Like he just didn't care.
I'll never forget somebody asked me, are you going to college when I was like 14? I was like, college is for pussies. And it was from the movie Accepted. And they're like, what'd you just say? I was like, what? I heard it in a movie. Like, you can't, I'm telling your mom. It's like, oh. I guess I can't say this. We're also bros before hoes. I said that to like when I was like when Bench Warmers came out, that movie.
Oh my
I
God.
heard bros before hoes, and I said it in front of my parents and like to my brother's friend that was going back to his house or something. I was like, bros before hoes, man. And then my parents just looked at me like, the fuck did you just say? I'm like, what? It's in a movie I watched. Like, I can't say things like that. Like, tell me I can't say fuck. Like, I didn't know it was that important.
Yeah, because like when do you know the thing like where it's just you're in school, your friend holds the door open for you, and then it's just like ladies first, but then you reply bros before hoes. That's me and my friends sometimes did that, and I think there was one time where someone said ladies first, and then the guy literally screamed bros before hoes, and the teacher who was like, I think it was one of the female teachers, she gave him like the dirtiest look, and he just ran out of the classroom before she could give out to him.
Well, there was a point when I was in school, and I'm not that old. I'm only 22, but I mean, so much has changed from 2008 to where we're at now. Don't mess with the Zohan with Adam Sandler. If you watch
Oh, I
that movie
love that.
now, that could not be remade today. They say the word fag probably 30 times in a matter of like 5 minutes, which is a big thing in America to get canceled for.
Yeah.
But a lot of like stereotypical racism isn't funny, but the way they did it was so ridiculous where you laughed at that guy for thinking that way, which I think was important to show. And, you look at that. Back when I was in school, there would be moments where a movie would come out and kids the next day would be talking about lines from the movie, scenes like, hey, like I would put my nutsack on your drum set. And it's like, I don't even fucking own a drum set, but you saw it in that movie. And now you see a movie, none of that happens anymore. I don't walk into school or I don't, my cousin isn't repeating lines from a movie. He just, it's all about Fortnite. It's all about these other things. I'm like, that's cool and all, but like, that's also where a lot of the stuff and a lot of the culture gets taken from because you got your jokes from movies. You got your line scenes where you can sit at the lunch table and reinstate or re-say a line scene and your buddy would be like, start laughing because he's seen it too. That doesn't happen anymore. Everything's kind of boring and bland.
Yeah, like a lot of like yeah, because that is actually true where no one really kind of like quotes movies anymore. Because when I was like in primary school, everyone would do that. It was always like songs, movies, and shows. Everyone like would just kind of quote it or sing the chorus or whatever. And then kind of when I got into like secondary school, everyone just kind of stopped doing it. And whenever like me and one of my friends kind of quote like the Star Wars prequels, it's usually only like the two of us that are laughing about it. Like not many people just kind of get on it. Or if we kind of just quote like I think it was like one I think we would quote like Inglorious Bastards a lot because and No Country for Old Men because we were like the only two who had seen it. Plus our English teacher actually he'd seen them as well. He was the one who introduced us to them. And so we were like the only people who kind of were quoting like the movies and stuff. And then like we had to wait almost like a year for anyone else to start doing it. But by then we were kind of quoting other movies and other like shows and stuff.
What do you predict the future of movies to be like? I mean, I've kind of rambled a lot through this podcast, but seriously, when it comes to the future of movies, in your opinion, do you think it's going to get better? Or do you think it's going to get worse?
I have like this strange feeling that it's gonna be all about like this pandemic. There's gonna be like a lot. I reckon there'll be more like apocalypse movies from now on, just because of the lockdown and stuff. Like recently there was kind of like an unfriended style movie that was released about a week ago, I think, called Host, where it's just a bunch of people like talking on Zoom and it is a horror. I hear that it's good, like it takes the concept and actually does it better than both of the unfriended movies.
But as more of an apocalypse movie, do you think that might hit a little bit too close to home? Because like when this all first kind of came about in the States, there was like grocery stores that were bare on supplies. It was like being in an apocalypse movie. I thought I was entering The Walking Dead. There's like a tumbleweed going across the street and shit. I'm like, whoa, like there's nobody on the road, no traffic. I can do a burnout right here. No cops are gonna pull me over. And it's like, do you think that might hit a little bit too close to home? I know there's probably going to be a coronavirus movie because I feel like everybody talks about it and
There's
still
going to be more than just one coronavirus movie, I'd
really.
say.
If I was a director, I would not take that cheap route of being like, let's create a movie about this. I would be like, let's talk about more of like a perspective of people. Like there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. I think what's really interesting is during this whole like stay home, don't go outside type thing was at the beginning it started like Endgame. Like every half the people you knew were gonna fucking die. And you realize it's not like that. But documentaries have increased in popularity, which I think is interesting because we're hearing about all this stuff that's happening with the government. We're hearing about all this stuff that's happening with this. And I'm like, this is where I talk about the paranoia and the schizophrenia thing. All these people that are conspiracy theorists and they end up being fucking right. Were they paranoid the whole time? And now it's like, I'm paranoid of being paranoid. It's like, oh my God. Like I've started watching all these documentaries and stuff about, learning a little bit about history. Um, I think they're important movies. Like I liked learning about moonshine. I liked learning about like the history of how our society has evolved from that to where we're at now when it deals with dealing with alcohol or something. And a good movie that plays on that is Lawless with Shia LaBeouf. A lot of people don't like Shia LaBeouf because he had his freak out and all these types of things. But then I saw the documentary with Shia LaBeouf and the one movie that came out recently called Peanut Butter Falcon. It's about him and a journey with a mentally challenged kid. And the kid is actually mentally challenged and he's completely changed Shia LaBeouf's life. They hang out almost every day. He said he literally brought him back from the brink of suicide. And you hear that in a documentary, and that really makes me want to go watch the movie to get to see that actual feeling and that capture. I've seen very few movies that when I'm watching it, I tear up. I it's hard to capture that, but when you sense the realness in it, when you sense like Up, for instance, when that woman died in the first 5 minutes, which was terrible, you got teared up because they captured you. They got this real emotion thing. And a lot of movies now, it's really hard to do that because they go so far fetched with an idea. There's a serial killer that's brought from reading a book and he's killed your sister. Okay, I can sympathize with a sister dying, but I can't sympathize if my sister got murdered by a killer from a secret book. Why don't you do something like a drinking and driving accident where you could feel that emotion? You know what I mean? Like play on that factor of things too. It's not trying to get people to cry in theaters, but to also bring out what movies are supposed to inspire when you watch a comedy, a drama, an action movie is emotion.
Yeah, like shit, what was I gonna say? And oh yeah, like I rarely tear up at movies myself. I have to genuinely really care about the character in order for me to kind of shed a tear. So like I think it was like Endgame or something. I shed a couple tears, but I wasn't crying like every single person in my theater. Like one of my friends was just bawling, crying. I wasn't there when he did it because he couldn't go to the premiere with us, but my friend who was with him told me that he was just crying his ass off throughout the whole film.
Have you ever felt awkward in a theater? Like when you're watching it, you're like, oh my God, like this is the most uncomfortable thing that I'm in right now. I've had two experiences. I can give you one if you need an example.
Yeah, give me one example. I'm curious now.
I went to go see Straight Outta Compton with my buddy who was also of the same skin color as me. And we were the only two white people in that whole entire theater. And when you're seeing cops beat people onto the ground just for being a certain skin color, which is kind of like it's not kind of, it's really messed up. And it was really kind of uncomfortable for us because everybody in the theater was just looking at us like, I'm going to beat the shit out of you when we get out of here. But then, like,
Oh God.
at the same time, when it was over, I learned more about history. I learned more about NWA. I did not know who that was. And then eventually, I ended up getting to be able to sit in a 64 Chevy Impala while playing Easy E, sitting in my 6'4". That whole thing. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but also Death at a Funeral. It was a black comedy. I had no idea about it. And I went to go see it with my grandparents when I was like 13 years old, where I was like,
Oh
this is so
God.
uncomfortable. Like, what are my grandparents going to think? And then my grandma does the snort laugh she does when she laughs really hard. And she loved the hell out of it. The dude's sitting on top, Donald Glover or Danny Glover, the guy who played in Lethal Weapon. I'm too old for this shit, whoever that is. He's sitting on top of a roof naked on drugs, and he's old as shit, and he's just slapping his legs together, and my grandma's busting out laughing. That could have been completely uncomfortable, considering that we were going to see before that was Steve Carell's Date Night. That's a complete two polar opposites. But I saw, Chris Rock and all these people, and I'm like, it's got to be a good movie. And it was an amazing movie, but those are two uncomfortable scenarios just because of what the storyline was about. Now, what's one for you?
I wouldn't say it was probably as uncomfortable as yours, but when I went to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, right, I was like the only kind of person my age there. Everyone, there was about like 10 other people, but they were all like over the age of 60 or something. I don't know like why, but because like my parents, my grandparents typically don't like his movies, but I was just like, okay. And then when it got to the part where Leonardo DiCaprio literally burns someone alive with a fucking flamethrower, I was trying to hold in a laugh because I was just fucking dying. I nearly fell off my seat. And then like some like old woman kind of turned around and just looked at me like, "What the fuck are you laughing at?"
That's like my grandfather when back in the day they used to do this thing when like there was no reclining seats and all that. There was just the crappy gum under the. I actually like those, to be honest with you. We always try and get the handicap spot, but he would sit there. There was a guy that would sit there in the front of the theater like for the first 10 minutes, and he had a clipboard and he would write down like the people there. Were they of an older variety? Were they of a younger variety? Who is this movie being, what percentage, analytics wise, who's coming to go see this movie? And every World War movie or any movie that happens to do with war, my grandpa would wait for it to come out on DVD or something before he watched it. I'm like, why don't we go pay and see it? You were fought in that war. He's like, I've already fucking lived it. I don't need to see it again. But when you went to go see those movies, there weren't anybody of that generation that was there, that or older people that would fought in the war that were there. It was more like people that stayed home and wanted to get a different perspective on it, because a lot of it was too real. But then they would end up watching it when they got home, and it's like, that's interesting stuff to know about. Like, oh, who was this movie fit for? Teen Titans Go, for instance, not fit for anybody above the age of 10. Just saying, based on the content, based on the jokes. I think that all plays into a bigger factor too. I try and keep that included in my mind when I watch movies. Like, who is this divided for? And then when I'm watching it, I'm like, that movie was complete garbage. That means I wasn't the audience. That means I wasn't the person they were trying to get.
Yeah, one of those movies for me was I took my sister and her cousin to see the live action Dora the Explorer movie. That was also another time I felt awkward because I was probably the oldest person there who wasn't a parent. So, and then next it was my sister and her cousin. And I was just sitting there with like all these kids around me, and I was just like, what am I doing here? Why did I do this to myself? And I ended up not liking the movie because, I wasn't the target audience.
I swear, every movie theater I've been to, or at least most of them, like 9 out of 10, there's always a crying baby in there. And the one that I
Oh,
went to that didn't have a crying baby in it, that I was surprised because I was 100% expecting it?
what was it?
The freaking Lego movie. I went in there wasn't one
What?
damn kid in there. I was like, these are all adults watching the Lego movie. But then I'm watching like Ghost Rider, or I'm watching something that's like above graphic for kids, like Men Who Stare at Goats. That's an amazing movie. A
Oh, my
bunch of
uncle gave that to me for my birthday, actually.
so here's the fun thing. I found out that movie increased in my view of it 10 years after I saw it in theaters, because I started studying a lot of government projects and found a thing called Project Jedi, which is what the movie Men Who Stare at Ghosts was based on. That whole all those actors and everything, that's based on a real government program. And I told one of my family members that, and my mom was like, "Hey, where they kept those goats in that shed where they did those mind experiments? That was right next to my high school." fucking
What?
increased in popularity in my mind. I was like, holy crap, like this movie's actually a lot better, but it was 10 years after I had seen it in theaters with my grandfather. And I was like, I was looking at a movie with Ewan McGregor and freaking uh
George Clooney.
yeah, George Clooney, and I didn't even know that this was based on an actual thing. And that's what I think is interesting about some movies, that if you want to talk about rewatching, when something like that happens, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is like mind blown. You end up wanting to sit there like contemplating life, like what happened?
Yeah, when you like watch a movie and you think it's just something that like someone just came up with, but then you realize it's just like it's actually based off something that they just heard of. You're like, what the fuck?
I just wrote the best scene play for a movie. You just explained to me the plot line for, oh wait, it's already created. Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, you know when you subliminally think of an idea and then you're like realize you saw it somewhere, you're like, oh, I
Yeah.
was really thinking I was going to invent Google.
Yeah, because like that's kind of like most movies in general now. Like when people like write a screenplay, it's more than likely it's based off all like films or books, that they've read and seen. So like a few people have said that like not many movies are kind of original now because they're all based off of something, like whether that be like another movie or some historical event or something like in a book or something. Like like it's still kind of like like it's not really original, but like they at least came up with it
For
with using the
instance,
stuff around them.
monsters. Your brain in a dream, when it has a nightmare or something, when it comes to a monster, is really bits and pieces of things you've seen. Your brain cannot create new faces. It only takes bits and pieces of things that you've seen and morphs it together to create something. So a lot of times you see a person in a dream, like, who was that? And you end up giving them a name, or you end up doing this thing. It's really somebody you've come across in your everyday life that's just subliminally imprinted into your head. It's the same reason werewolves, all these things that you see in movies, they're just bits and pieces of different animals that that person ended up like. I know a dude that created a werewolf movie. I forgot the director's name, but he started talking about how it came to him in a dream one night. It didn't come to him in a dream. Well, it came to him in a dream, but it didn't create it out of thin air. It came from a bits of a bear, a bit of a wolf, a bit of a this, a bit of a that, and then eventually created into something. That's kind of what everything is. And it's so hard because we talk about how people can be so creative. That creativity lacks when it just seems like it's really hard to do in today's time. Everything, it seems like you're trying to create something and it's like, oh, it's already created. That's because you need to look for inspiration, not through your devices and through what's trending. You need to find it in yourself and it'll come to you.
Yeah, kind of like your own life experiences, like stuff from your childhood. Those are like some of the movies that I like. Like the director Noah Baumbach, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Like a lot of his movies are like based on his own life, like Marriage Story is kind of based on his own divorce, like.
I just want to see a
And
movie, like a war movie, where a dude gets shot in the dick and then they just focus on that. I've seen way too many movies where it's like, I saw X-Men Apocalypse. I don't know how you feel about that one.
it's been a while since I've seen it, but I did enjoy it. The only X-Men movie I've seen in the cinema is fucking Dark Phoenix.
Damn,
I,
dude, you pick the worst one that gets crapped on.
I know. Like I decided, like my friend told me about them, like this was like a kind of when I got into the MCU, so this was like 2017, 2018, and he just like my friend said, "Oh, you need to watch the X-Men movies." Oh wait, no, the first one I saw was Deadpool 2 actually. That was technically
You
the
started
first one
with
I
the
saw.
second one?
I was too young to see the first one. I had to wait till it
Dude.
came out in DVD to watch it.
Okay. Well, you know what? You know how we're going to wrap this? We're going to wrap this like this. You're going to promote your Instagram page. You're going to promote where people can find you. Then I'm going to have everybody listening to this episode, please send your movie recommendations for this critic in training. That's his Instagram profile. Am I getting that right? Is there an underscore in there?
There's an underscore between critic and in training.
Okay. So find him on Instagram. I'm going to link his profile in the description. You're going to send him your movie recommendations that he should watch, your favorite movie, and then also your least favorite movie. I'm going to send him a list of the ones that we've kind of talked about so he can, do a review on them, because everything I've seen on your profile, I'm like, this is all the stuff that's in the box office. Let me see
I
something
know.
you got to get an old one in there. Some of these elderly people, these older generations like myself that are talking to you like you're 5 years old, are want to see this movie. But seriously, man, it's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Is there anything else you want to say?
Um, yeah, like my Instagram is at critic_in_training. This is totally optional, but people can check out my YouTube channel if they want. I have not uploaded in a year. Me and my friend did a podcast on the MCU, which is what I would consider to be our best, like the best video. Oh, and also in January, I got people to like send me movie recommendations, and it just went through the roof. Like I still haven't even gotten through all of them. So when people are gonna be sending, when you and other people are gonna be sending me movies, it's just gonna be, my list is gonna be huge. Like it's already huge, but it's gonna be way bigger.
The
So
list is going
that's
to be
something to look
huge,
forward to.
and your anxiety is going to be through the roof.
Oh, it will definitely.
Well,
My
thank you.
t my TV is just gonna be on all the time. Just gonna be sitting here like, yeah,
You don't
24/7.
need school. You just need to watch movies.
That is the meaning of life.
That is the meaning of life. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank, and stay tuned for the next episode.